Welcome to another installment of the United Way's Community Impact Series, Advancing the Common Good. My name is Katie Gallagher, and I'm the Marketing Specialist at the United Way of the Lewis and Clark area. With me today, we have our Executive Director, Brian Johnson. Thank you for joining me today, Brian.
Yeah, glad to be here, Katie. Thanks for doing these interviews. I think you've been doing a great job on these lately.
And we have them on social media, too. So if you miss it on HCTV, you can check it out on our Facebook page, on Twitter, and we have our very own YouTube channel.
Local access television on social media.
Yes.
This is the wave of the future, folks.
Yes.
Check it out.
Yeah, so today we're talking about our allocations process. It's something that we've been doing for decades here at the United Way of the Lewis and Clark area. And can you share a little bit about what allocations is?
Yeah, you bet. Allocations is kind of like Christmas time at United Way. So during the fall, we asked the community in Broadwater, Lewis and Clark, and Jefferson counties to support us through financial gifts. We call that annual campaign. And when people in the community choose to support United Way, they're really supporting their neighbors. And so when people give in the fall, some folks choose a particular organization to give their dollars to, and that's fantastic. Other folks choose to contribute to our community fund, and those are dollars that then the community comes back this time of year through the allocations process to make some decisions about the top priorities in our community for funding.
All right, and how do you get involved? So you're volunteering your time, but how do you learn more?
Yeah, well, allocations is meant to be a community-wide, inclusive, transparent process. And so anyone who's interested should visit volunteerhelena.org. That's a website for volunteerism that United Way administers. And there's lots of volunteer opportunities on there. It's sort of the Facebook of volunteerism for the community, volunteerhelena.org. And when you go there, you'll see numerous organizations that have opportunities to give back, give your time and your effort through volunteer service. And one of the opportunities you'll see on that page is United Way Allocations. And so you can sign up through volunteerhelena.org to be an allocations volunteer.
And how many volunteers is the United Way looking for this year?
Well, we've got some volunteers for sure. You know, this is a process that a number of people in the community have been dedicated to for many, many years. So we have a very strong bench, if you will, of leaders. We probably have 20 or 30 leaders who've done this, probably each of them for more than 7 or 10 years.
Wow.
So there are folks that understand the process. So far, I think last you told me, we were sort of approaching about 150 people who'd expressed an interest in being an allocations volunteer this year. But we can always use more, because allocations, as I said, is meant to be an inclusive and transparent process that brings the whole community together to make decisions about funding, and funding of projects and agencies and things that change your neighbors' lives. So how many do we need? That's not really the question. The question is, how many of you out there want to engage in the allocations process? And if you do, visit volunteerhelena.org, and we'll do our best to plug as many people as we can and to make sure we have the leadership support so that the process is successful.
All right, and so can you walk us through what you would do as a volunteer? So you sign up on volunteerhelena.org, and then what do you do?
Yeah, I think allocations is one of the coolest ways to volunteer ever, as a matter of fact. So here's what you do. You're giving other people's money away, so that's sort of fun. You're sort of like a foundation of 8 or 10, you know, a little group of folks. And so here's how it works. You sign up on volunteerhelena.org, and then we assign you to a panel of, I don't know, between 10 and 15 other volunteers who want to help with the process. That panel then has 3 agencies in our community who have submitted funding applications that panel is responsible for reviewing. And that's the part that everybody loves. So the panel of 10 or 15 volunteers gets the paper application, has an opportunity to read through their mission work and their financial statements, and then the panel does site visits at each of those 3 agencies. And allocations volunteers love that process, the opportunity to go to acting and productive community organizations to hear about how they're changing neighbors' lives. So the allocations volunteers get assigned to a group. The group reviews the paper applications. The group together goes to each of the 3 nonprofits for a site visit and for a conversation with the staff and senior leadership, and sometimes clients who are served by that organization. And then the group gets together one last time to make a decision about what the funding levels should be for each of those organizations, and if there's any special recommendations that the committee has, any suggestions that that committee has for the organization or the program to improve itself, or any concerns that might need to be resolved. So it's a really dialogical process that is transparent and inclusive, and it doesn't happen without you.
And how much time can people expect to spend with this allocations process if they volunteer?
If you commit to being an allocations volunteer, you're probably looking at spending somewhere between 4 and 7 hours of time going through that process I just described, reviewing the paper applications, visiting the agencies, and then making some final funding and program recommendations with your allocations committee. So any individual allocations volunteer is probably going to spend between 4 and 7 hours doing it. And the product that you create then gets pushed up to our board of directors. United Way of the Lewis and Clark area is a nonprofit, and so we have a volunteer, duly elected board of directors, and that board of 16 members reviews the recommendations from all of these allocations panels and then makes a final funding decision with those community fund dollars.
All right, and are you looking for any particular skills or qualities among these volunteers? I know we could use a lot of volunteers, but any particular skills that are important that volunteers bring to the table?
What a great question. There is one particular skill that we make sure every panel has a couple of folks who are familiar with, and that is a financial background. People who are really familiar with reading and analyzing financial statements. And so that could be bankers or investment professionals or even small business people who are very comfortable with kind of standard form, typically QuickBooks, statement of activities. That's what we call it in the nonprofit sector. The for-profit sector calls it the balance sheet.
Yes.
And so, yeah, folks with a financial background are helpful, but we only need 1 or 2 of those folks on every panel. And so really, the primary quality is just an interest in seeing the community served well. That's the quality that makes a good allocations volunteer. You know, we also make sure that there's a couple of people on the panel that understand United Way and our operations and the community. So, you know, those folks and the people with the financial experience really help guide the process. But for the general public, just a willingness to serve your neighbor and to make sure that things are happening effectively and efficiently in our social service network is all that's needed.
That's great, and I know this year we've been talking to some high school students even to get youth voices on these panels and sharing their voice so that funding decisions are made the best that they can be here in the community. So I think that that's one example of how we're really diversifying this process.
Yeah, we had one exceptional high school student, a young woman named Summer Deagle, who helped with our point in time count, and she's a senior. Ooh, I'm going to get the high school wrong. So she's a senior in high school. I won't say which one, lest I, you know, that would be bad. But, you know, Summer was a high school student that helped with one of our projects, and I think she'll plug into one of these panels. And that's right, there's an appropriate role for everyone to contribute their voice and to help make sure that the allocations of the community fund go well.
And can you speak a little bit about the partner agencies? So we know that United Way works in health, education, and income, but can you speak a little bit about the different agencies that participate in this process generally and what type of work they do in our community?
Yeah, currently we have 31 funded partners, and those agencies run the gamut from, say, Elkhorn Search and Rescue, that provides obviously search and rescue services in emergency outdoor situations in rural Montana, to something like Westmont that provides supportive housing for persons with developmental disabilities, and everything in between. And so these 31 partner agencies are a network of providers that focus on those areas you mentioned, education, income, and health, to create positive outcomes in our community.
So another great example that there's a wide variety of interest areas. So folks are interested in anything from search and rescue to people with developmental disabilities to eliminating hunger in our community. Lots of different ways to plug into the allocations process. So can you talk once again how people can get involved? VolunteerHelena.org. Can they call our office?
Sure. Give us a call, 442-4360 or volunteerhelena.org. And we really need you out there. You know, United Way is in the impact business. And really, our customers are our donors. That's you. And this allocations process is an opportunity for United Way to serve the community well, but we can't do it without you.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Katie.